If there are any unspoken prayer requests, let it be shown by the raising of our hands. Precious Father, thank you, Lord God, once again for keeping us. Thank you for your mercy. Thank you for your grace. Another opportunity to gather together in your name and hear what thus saith the Lord. Pray, oh God, that you bless this service this morning. Father, send your spirit by here. Meet every need according to your riches and glory. Bless the speaker, oh God, and give us a hungry heart to hear from you, that our lives might be changed. Bless those that are listening, those that are on their way, those that are in Northfield, those that would love to be here and cannot be here. We pray that you touch them with a double portion. This we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. We would normally have started a little sooner. We're trying to wait for a few other people to get here, but there are many of those that are listening by Ustream, those that are on the airways that can hear what the service is about. So we're going to go ahead and introduce Brother Maurice Massey and let him have his way this afternoon, this morning. Let's greet him with a hearty amen.
Praise the Lord, saints. Praise the Lord. I guess Sister Master wanted me to do a part two. And so I guess I'm going to finish up. Last time, Evangelist Sunday Joan, she put pressure on me. She stared me down. She reprimanded me for, I guess, I couldn't help being a little long-winded. See, I have the blood of Elder Massey, so I got a little long-winded. And so I had seen her, she gave me the evil eye. She was giving me the evil eye, stared me down, so I gave her the blind eye and the deaf ear. She was trying to wave me off for about 45 minutes, and I kept on looking other directions. But I won't be that long this time, because we want to get to the Word of God. This is normally Evangelist Sunday Jones' domain, but I'm not actually doing really a Sunday school per se. Just I guess you can call it a testimonial. Maybe it can help someone else out. But where we had left off at before, I believe, was when the Lord had performed a miracle as far as Bridget being in the hospital, and the doctors gave a prognosis to the family and myself that Bridget wasn't going to survive and that she would never leave the hospital alive. And they were pretty blunt about it. And from the last time I told you all how the Lord came through in the hospital, and despite the negative prognosis from all the experts, the doctors with 30 and 40 years of experience, the Lord came through. And so we finally had gotten Bridget home. And so after the Lord, I wanted to tell you all this. After the Lord had performed that miracle, I was pretty confident. I was loaded with faith, as were my relatives, and I believe the saints, because obviously you can feel the prayers of the saints. But after he had performed that miracle, it was something like you had never, at least I had never experienced. It was like an all-time high. Like, it felt as though, I had visualized it. I had never doubted that the Lord was going to bring her through, despite the doom and gloom, us being sat down in the conference room with the doctors and the hospice nurses. And despite all that, I was very confident. You can ask my parents, my sister, and like I told you, my one sister, Buff, she's in Atlanta right now. She was a little concerned because she thought I was a little too confident. And it was just, I was so confident, not in myself, but in in God's ability. I had just so much faith on what God was about to do and the anticipation of what he was, of the miracle that he was about to perform. So after he did it, so it wasn't a shock, that he did it. It's just like everything happened as I had visualized it. Everything just panned out as I visualized it. And after it was done, and after seeing the nurses and the doctors peeking in to see if she had expired already, and then they finally declared after a day that she was going to move out of the intensive care unit. It was like walking on a cloud. Like you're actually walking, but it was like an all-time high. I can't explain it. I know some other people, my sisters, my mother, I know we all experienced it, but it was like an all-time high, to be able to witness and experience God working that miracle. So, so long story short, she stayed there in the recovery for a couple of days, and she was sent home. But one of the things about it is after going through the ordeal, going through being in the ICU and not being able to eat for 2 weeks. See, I was between a rock and a hard place when I was at the hospital, because she was making some very good strides, and she was starting to recover, because we had just started her on the Budwig protocol right before, like maybe 5 days prior to her, maybe a week prior to her going in the second time. And so she was starting to be energized, and she was getting stronger and things like that. And at this time, she was able to, do things. She was walking and able to walk around, and she needed a little bit of assistance, but nothing around the clock. She was able to do things. And after this stint of being in there and with no food for 2 weeks, and I'm pretty certain that was the downfall right there. And see, I was in between a rock and a hard place. Anybody that knows anything or just a little ounce about dealing with cancer, that sugar feeds cancer. Unless you're using sugar as a Trojan, unless you're using a natural sugar source as a Trojan horse to feed the cancer, basically to trick the cancer to get nutrients and antioxidants into the cancerous cells. If you're using just plain sugar, or even fructose, which is sugar from fruit, if you're just using that, cancer cells love sugar, and they eat it up. And what happens is cancer cells thrive off of sugar. So I was in between a rock and a hard place, because I wanted her to get the feeding tube, but I had already did some research, and there were some natural alternatives that I was going to get and use. And plus I had some recipes that I could have actually used, to put in the bag, so that she can use, blend it up and get it to the right consistency so that she can use it in her feeding tube. But the doctor and the nurse, they said, I said, what are you going to be feeding her? And the first thing that comes out of their mouth, oh, it's very nutritious. It's sugar and such and such. I said, cornstarch and modified this. I said, oh my God. I said, this is a killer. So I was in between a decision on allowing her to deteriorate even faster with allowing them to feed her sugar, or not, hoping and praying every day that she was going to get that tube taken out. So I had chose, trying to delay, have them put those chemicals in her, and hoping and praying that she could get the tube out. Well, it ended up taking longer than what I expected. So push came to shove. They would not let me. They talked. The administrator at the hospital said they weren't going to allow me to use any alternatives there. It was their hospital, and it was a big thing. So we knew that we had to do something. So we had to allow her to have the feeding tube with the processed food. That processed food, which is, for any cancer patient, for anyone, it's detrimental, but cancer patients, it's extremely detrimental. So we wanted to get her home as soon as possible to get her back on the regimen that she was starting to recover from. So after we finally got her home, I was watching and observing, and Bridget just wasn't the same. She wasn't the same. And her memory wasn't there. She didn't remember a lot of things. She didn't even remember her ordeal in the hospital. She didn't remember anything. She didn't remember how she got there. She had no recollection of anything. And then normal things, everyday things, she just didn't remember anything. And I would quiz her. I remember a couple of times I've quizzed her on things. And first of all, in order for Bridget to let me quiz her, to interrogate her, you knew she wasn't herself, but she's not going to let me interrogate her. That's not going to happen. I'll get away with maybe one or two questions, and after that she'll shut me down. She's not going to get interrogated. But it went on for a little while, and I said, "Oh, that's not her." After I got through like 10, 15 questions, and I'm still asking questions. I think my mother could have been there, and I was asking her questions. I said, "Do you know this? Do you know that?" And she was just answering the questions, and "No, I don't remember this." I said, "This is not good." I said, "Bridget never lets me interrogate her like this. She would shut that party down in a heartbeat. She will not be interrogated." And then finally, I think she caught on after the 50th question, she caught on and finally shut me down. But it took her that long, though. But I knew something just wasn't right. I couldn't put my finger on it. And she had this certain look in her eyes. There was a certain look. It's like a childlike state look, and it was like it's hard to describe. But there was a look that I just didn't feel good about. I didn't have any experience as far as that look was concerned. I didn't do any research as far as the look, but the look bothered me. I didn't like that look. So I knew she had lost her, she didn't memorize a lot of things, and I know one of the side effects of being on propofol, is, memory loss. And she was on a high dosage until we fought to get her taken off of propofol. And we didn't want her on it. She was on a very high dosage. And so we attributed her memory loss and her state of mind, we attributed it to the propofol, the high dosage of propofol that she was on. And so, we're watching and observing, and, Brittany, she was still there. She's lucid, my mom was coming in praying with her, and that was encouraging. And, but I had noticed that as far as like Bridget, anyone that's worked with Bridget, I lived with her obviously. As far as her church administration duties and things like that, and her, working in the classroom and things like that. Like Bridget sometimes it was normal for her to be in the classroom till 10 o'clock at night. That was the norm for her, And she's always doing something, When we come here to Troy, when we go to Northfield, I would like to get right back on the road. She has to take care of she has to count the money, she has to do this and make sure everything's right and pay some bills and this and that. So she's always on top of things as far as, her her administrative duties, concerning redemption was concerned. And she was very particular about her truck. She was very particular about her truck, what's going on with her truck. She didn't want kids tearing her truck up and things like that. And she didn't have any concerns about anything. She didn't ask me about her truck. And that started to concern me. She didn't ask about, she didn't have any cares about anything. And the only thing, she was so fatigued, I would sit there and try to have a conversation with her. And she was so fatigued, she'll fall asleep right on you. She'll stay up for a little bit and engage us with conversation. But she was probably sleeping. She was probably sleeping maybe 20 hours a day. And I knew that was a problem. And I did my research and I had some concerns. And it wasn't for a lack of faith. It was something, I couldn't put my finger on it. I just didn't feel the way I felt in the hospital. And I didn't doubt God. I never doubted him. I just saw him perform a miracle in the hospital. But for some reason, this second stint, I kept it to myself because I didn't want to alarm my mom or my sisters. And my sisters, Pig and Shell, I don't know what I would have been able to do without them. The Lord orchestrated, that Pig was up here and then Shell was up here, and I don't know what I would have been able to do without my sisters, because that was too much of a task for me. And then we had Sister Gigi, Beanie, Sister Grimes, Kathy. Kathy was there every single day, giving her the coffee enemas. And I don't know what I would have been able to do without the help of the saints and my sisters. And the Lord had my sisters up there just at the right time. But I didn't want to alarm anyone, but I just couldn't put my finger on it. I just didn't feel right about the situation. And, during this time, I tried to engage Bridget with conversation, and she'll fall asleep. She was extremely, extremely fatigued. She couldn't keep her eyes open, when we would take care of her or, changing her and things like that and helping her up, using the bathroom and things like that. She was awake. But after that, it was shutdown time, My mother would, she would get to pray with my mom. Well, other than that, she was sleeping 20 hours a day, and I knew that was a problem. I knew that wasn't right. And anybody knows about any symptoms as the end days, and when you have severe fatigue like that, and I knew that was a problem, and I didn't want to alarm anyone, and I knew the Lord could still perform a miracle, but I just didn't feel right about this last situation. I didn't, and it wasn't a lack of faith. I didn't doubt, I just saw what like I said, I just saw what the Lord had just performed in the hospital. But this last time, I just didn't feel right about it. I couldn't put my finger on it. I didn't feel right, and I saw the signs, and I saw this look in her eye, and it was just, she had just such a peace and serenity. She was never afraid. During this whole ordeal, she showed no anxiety as far as her condition was concerned, other than, I'll tell you about the other situation, but she never showed any signs, no fear. And in what I had processed, and I kept it to myself, and it looked like she was ready to go. And I didn't even know about the conversation she had with my son, Red, in the hospital. I didn't find that out until she had passed away. But I just could not put my finger on it. There was just such a peace and a serenity, and she was just so relaxed, and I couldn't put my finger on it. So I was monitoring this, and during that time, I was probably, I would say easily anywhere from 8 to 10 hours a day. I was researching. I haven't done so much. Throughout the years since I've gotten into alternative health and become very interested in it since like maybe 2006. I've done some research, not on cancer, a little bit on cancer, but other, elements like, as far as my condition was concerned, it's diabetes, hypertension, and things like that, the cardiovascular system, some other things. But I had immersed myself into research because there was so much to learn, signs, and then, I was looking and things, and I should have did this, I should have did that, and it was just so much to research, and I'm researching it, and during this whole time, I just didn't feel right about it. So I remember Beanie and Sister Grimes, they had came up on a Sunday, and to help out, to I guess Shell and Pig, and they came to church, and it was Beanie and Sister Grimes. And so we got Bridget outside. She went to go outside, and we got her outside, and I took a picture of her and sent it to my father. And so when I was examining the pictures, I looked at the picture and I looked at her eyes, and I blew it up, with the iOS system. You can blow it up, and I pulled in the picture, and I was looking at those. I just couldn't get over her eyes, the eyes situation, and I didn't do any research on the eyes, but the eyes just didn't make me feel good. I didn't feel good about those eyes. I said, this just doesn't look good. I said, I've never heard anything about it, but I said, I'm not feeling good about these eyes. I mean, it's hard to describe. It was like a childlike state. I mean, the eyes, and it was like maybe I don't know. I lack the vocabulary to express on how her eyes looked, but that concerned me, so I kept it to myself. So we're going on, and we're praying for a recovery, and she seemed like she was getting a little stronger. She was able to stand and things like that, and we were giving a little physical therapy when we can get her up and things like that. But then it was one night. It was me and Shell. Pig has her two little kids, so Shell would do the night duty along with me, working with Bridget, and she was staying in the house with me. And Bridget, all of a sudden, she just went, she just had a burst of energy. She wanted to get up, and she wanted to move, she wanted to do this, and this was like, it would start about like 1 o'clock in the morning, and it would last until the morning. And I remember doing some research, and I had ran across the end of days, and I ran across something called delirium. And I had saw it in the hospital, and I had did some research on it. And so it happened one night. I mean, me and Shell were literally up. We were probably up with Bridget, we were probably up maybe 25, 26 hours. We didn't get any sleep because she wanted to get up. She was restless. She was calling for Pig, and she was constantly calling. And we would leave her cell phone next to her so that she can call one of us. Shell was down below sleeping on the couch, and I would go upstairs. And so whenever she wanted to, she needed us, we would have her call us. So we would tuck her in and everything. So we think we're going to go get a little bit of sleep. I said, Bridget, now if you need us, you call us. I get upstairs. That was that first night. I get upstairs. Maybe 5 minutes later, I'm getting a call. Bookie, I need you. So I go flying downstairs. I said, what's going on, Bridget? And I need to sit up. I said, what do you mean you need to sit up? I need to sit up. So me and, we're letting her sit up. I said, okay, what's happening right now? I'm just going to sit up and I'm going to sleep like this. And it was just like, it was just like some crazy talk. So we didn't, and this is before the delirium had kicked in. And then she was, she was like literally calling us like every few minutes. And it got to the point where we had to stay there. And this went on for about, I would say about 2 days. She was calling, And in retrospect, I remember, digressing to my situation and how good the Lord has been. I was in a state of delirium myself when I was in the hospital. And that's how close I was to, it reminded me how close I was to death. Because I remember I was doing the same thing. All the symptoms that Bridget had, the delirium, staying up. I mean, she was up. Bridget was up for like 72 hours at one time. It was like 3 days, almost like 3 days straight, 72 hours. And we couldn't get any sleep. And we were done. And I remember everything we saw her doing as far as, you all can look up the symptoms of delirium. She was doing it. Restlessness, very needy and talking out of sorts. I remember I had those same symptoms when I was in the hospital, but mine only lasted for about a day and a half, 2 days. Because what happened was, when I was in ICU, Pig was staying with me overnight, and her and Michelle were rotating. And it's ironic, they were there with me when I was in ICU, and they were there with Bridget when she was having her, going through her ordeal. But I remember, hallucinating, and I remember seeing they were up in, I think I was in St. Mary's, and they had a cross up there, a crucifixion of, the depiction of Jesus dying on the cross. And I remember when it kicked in, I didn't know what was going on, but looking back in retrospect, I was going through delirium. I saw Jesus when Pig would lay her head down, Jesus was looking down at me, and he was laughing, and he had like these devilish teeth. And it sounds funny right now, and it sounds crazy, but it's just, as the way I'm describing to you, it just, as you all can see me and I can see you, that's the way I saw it. And I would tell Pig, I said, Pig, I was calling Pig, I said, Pig, look at Jesus, look what he's doing. I was talking crazy, and I remember it. I didn't know it was real to me at that time. And Pig would look at Jesus, and she said, Buki, what are you talking about? Just go to sleep. And I remember being so disgusted with Pig, because she got to the point, it was like 5 o'clock in the morning, she couldn't do it anymore. She just went to sleep on me. She was done with me. I guess she knew I was hallucinating, but Bridget was doing that same stuff, she was, communicating, licking her tongue out at Jeff. I've never even seen her lick her tongue out at Jeff before. She did some things that are, symptoms of delirium. And thank the Lord I was only in the state, because usually when you hit delirium like that, anyone that has an experience as far as dealing with, maybe Sister Gigi might know, or Sister Grimes might know, Beanie might know, dealing with people that are dying, when you hit that state of delirium, death is imminent pretty soon. It's within days or maybe a week or so. And at the time, I didn't know, but I started doing some research, because she was up for 72 hours, and I punched in delirium, and I read all the symptoms. I was reading accounts from hospice and things like that, and I saw what was going on. So I kept it to myself, and I knew that the end was near. But like I was telling you before, I just didn't feel as though that there was going to be a recovery this time. And it wasn't because I didn't think that God could do it. I just didn't think maybe it's not his will, because I remember my father telling me about a conversation he was having with Bridget. And she was telling him, he was asking her about a healing. And she didn't say anything about healing, which disturbed me, and it scared me. I was a little disturbed by it. I didn't say anything, but she said, I just want the Lord's will to be done. And I didn't like that talk, for selfish reasons. I didn't like that talk. I want the Lord's will to be done, but I wanted her to ask for healing. See, with me, I guess she knew I couldn't handle it. we had talked about getting healed and things like that. And with my mother and my father, she's talking about she just wants the Lord's will to be done. And I said, that's it. So my father says, well, you have to remember, God's going to honor her request. And this was like maybe 2 weeks prior. And she was talking about, my father was explaining to us and the family, and he was telling me that, he said, Bridget said that she just wants the Lord's will to be done. I said, did she ask to be healed? She said she never asked to be healed. I said, Lord have mercy. I'm thinking, and my heart just dropped. I said, good God Almighty. So this second time, around, I just didn't feel good about the situation. She had the delirium. I did the research, and I knew the time was coming. I didn't know when. I knew it was coming within a couple of days, a week. I thought it was coming within a couple of days because of how severe the delirium was. And it was really bad. So the hospice nurse came in, and so Pig and Shell, they were describing to the hospice nurse Bridget's symptoms, they didn't know it was delirium. I knew it was delirium, and I knew the prognosis, it wasn't looking good. I knew the only thing that was going to, save her was another miracle, but I just didn't see a miracle on the horizon. Just because of her talk about being God's will. I didn't know why, but so I come in the hallway, and the nurse had been talking to Pig and Shell, and they said, Buki, the nurse just told us everything that Bridget's been going through, it's called delirium. And she said, and the nurse was looking at me, feeling sorry for me, and she said, yeah, I'm sorry to say. She said, but from my 30 years of experience, she had 30 years of experience, other nurses had 30 years of experience. We had a lot of nurses and doctors with years of experience. So she said, I've been doing this for a while, and she said, whenever, they have a delirium, and especially that severe, she said, usually you got to prepare. She said, usually the end is near. And she said, it's called delirium. And I said, oh, okay. And so, Pig and them were trying to explain to me, and I explained to them, I said, well, Pig, and Shell, I said, I actually already knew about this. I did some research on it. I knew about it. I was trying to protect them and the family. I didn't want to bring that up. I said, well, maybe the Lord might perform another miracle, but, I was hoping, but I just didn't feel right about it. So after the 72 hours, we were done. Done. Physically exhausted. We were working around the clock, It was a Saturday night. We had convened with my mom, and what we were going to do was we were going to up the coffee enemas. We were going to up the coffee enemas, and we were going to up the ante because we were giving her 2 coffee enemas a day. I think we were going to move it to 3 or 4 coffee enemas. So we were going to start it on Sunday, and we were going to do some other things. So we were going to kick up the physical therapy. So So I guess it was the last day of the delirium. So Pig and I tucked her in. It was maybe 1 o'clock, 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. And we tucked her in, and we were expecting her to, proceed with, like she had been the prior days with the severe delirium, trying to get up out of the bed. And, she was literally trying to launch herself out. She just wasn't strong enough. But she was trying to get up, not trying to hurt herself. She was trying to get up, trying to sit herself up. You can look up the symptoms of delirium, and she had a severe hyperactiveness, and she was super hyperactive, and a lot of energy, a lot of crazy demands and things like that. But so we were expecting another night of delirium, dealing with her delirium. So I had read. He was staying downstairs with her because I was done. I was on fumes. I had to get some sleep. I just needed a couple hours. And so I was just hoping and praying that I can just get a couple hours to work with Bridget because I Literally, I was done. I was spent. Shell was spent. Pig was spent. We were done. Like, stick a fork in us, we were done. I mean, we didn't have any problems. We loved Bridget, and we, it wasn't a problem. We weren't complaining about it, but physically, we were on fumes. I mean, we just, my back was done. I was literally done. I felt as though I was going to pass out, literally. So Red stayed in there with her that night, Saturday night going into Sunday. So he got himself together in the chair, and so I'm waiting for him. I said, Red, call me if anything happens or whatever. So I'm going up there, and I'm on pins and needles, laying in the bed, and all of a sudden, 5 minutes goes by, half hour, hour goes by, I don't get any call. So I said, after about 2 hours, I went downstairs, and I went in there and peeked in, and I saw Red sleeping, and Bridget was sleeping. I said, okay, thank you, Jesus. I said, she's finally getting some sleep. So I went back up there. So I'm still on edge. Every little noise, I'm just on edge. So I keep on looking at the clock every hour. And all of a sudden, around 8 o'clock rolls around. I still didn't hear anything from Red or Bridget. She didn't call me. Red didn't call me. I said, this is kind of strange. I said, this is a long time. She hasn't slept like this in a while. So I go downstairs to see what's going on. I see Red sleeping, and I see anyone maybe a few of you all maybe have had some loved ones that have passed away, and you've seen the end of life. What happens is it's like they're gasping for air. I've seen it before. When someone's about to expire, and you can do research on the internet, and they have videos out there of people's their last breaths. And I saw her doing the guppy. It's like a fish, out of water, and they're gasping for air. And she was in the beginning stages of it. And I looked at her, and I knew it was the end. I knew it was coming to the end. So I filmed it, a little clip of it, and I sent it to my parents, and I explained to them, her heart rate, another thing is, at the end, one of the symptoms and the signs of the end of life is, we were on a regular basis checking her oxygen and her heart rate. Her heart rate was 130 beats per minute, and I knew that was a problem. And it had been like that this is like the fourth day, was at 130 beats per minute. And at 130 beats per minute, I knew it was near the end. So I took her heartbeat. It was like, it was still at 135. So I took a short video, sent it to my parents, and I explained to them about what a normal heart rate should be. And, anything over 100, resting heart rate, that's a problem. It normally should be, around 60s, 70s, optimal, but she was at 135 this morning. And she was starting at the beginning stages of gasping for air. So I sent a little clip to my parents, and I explained to them in the text that it, wasn't looking good, and that her, the normal, or what a normal heart rate should be, and what her resting heart rate was, and I, my father prayed, my mom prayed, and so my mom was still up there in Northfield, and she came over, so we scratched everything as far as our new regimen was concerned, and she wasn't responsive, responding. I was asking her questions, and she would respond, but everything was a yes. So everything I said, she could barely open her eyes, and everything was a yes. So I'd ask her questions that the answer should have been no, and she was just saying yes. She could hear, but she really wasn't responding. Everything was yes. I was asking her crazy things just to see where her mind was and see what she can understand. Everything was yes. So my mother came over, and we knew, without even talking about it, we knew that it was near the end. The time was coming. And we knew it was going to be within that day or the next day. And as the day went on, the symptoms of her gasping for air, got, a little worse. But she didn't look like she was in any pain or anything. So, this went on, and we prayed, and my father reminded me when I talked to him about what, his conversation with her and what she wanted. And she had never asked for to be healed. She said she just wanted God's will to be done. And so, we stayed by her side, and our redemption family, Sister Holmes, Elder Holmes, Kathy, Sister Grimes, who else? The other people, the family, we were there, by her bedside, and we knew she was on her way out. And I remember Sister Holmes saying, "Well, maybe we should call 911." And I said, Sister Holmes, I said, there's nothing 911 can do. I remember telling Sister Holmes, there's nothing 911 can do. I said, the only thing that's going to save her right now is an intervention from God, if that's what he decides to do. There was really nothing we could do. And we sang, we prayed by her bedside, as she was expiring. And so everyone else, I said everyone else can go home. And so Red and I stayed by her bedside, until we watched, and I was monitoring her vitals every 5 minutes. And then I knew about 3 o'clock, maybe about, I would say about 2 o'clock, I noticed that her resting heart rate was starting to go down. It was at like 135. And actually at one time, I think it got to 150. So it started working its way down and working its way down. And it started going down. Her oxygen levels were going down. And then it was right at, I was giving my mom updates. I was texting her updates every 30 minutes. I was giving her updates, giving her, because I, was explaining to them as it gets closer to the time for her to expire, her heart rate was going to go down, and her oxygen levels were going to go down. So I was giving my mom her vitals every 30 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes. I would text it out. So this last time, I took her vitals, and I believe her heart rate was down to 50 something. So I went to text, and her oxygen had dropped down to something crazy. And mind you, we had the oxygen tank on full blast, and it had dropped. So I was texting my mom, this is going to be it, and she needs to get over here because I think she's going to pass away pretty soon. And then all of a sudden, boom. As I was texting, she goes into the, some of you might have seen it, and some of, it might be a little graphic. It's kind of a little graphic, but they go into a death chatter, they do this chatter, and the teeth are chattering, like they're shivering. And she went into that. It's like she went into a convulsion and to a chatter, and I knew she was taking her last breaths. And I woke Red up, and I said, "Red, I got him up so that he can spend his last moments with her." And Shell woke her up. She came running in, and she had expired. And so everything didn't really, I guess everything just hit me at one time. And it had been building up for the, few days, but I was so active and, working with her and tending to her needs that it didn't really sink in until she actually passed away. And so you always hear, if there was a title for the second part, you always hear, it's like a cliche, a church cliche, God's grace is there in the time of need. Well, it's not a cliche, and you can ask people that have experienced it prior, experienced it also. Elder Winley, Sister Suggs, Sister Dorothea, and other people that have lost loved ones, if you lost, Sister Holmes, and there's some others here that, my grandmother, losing my, her daughter, my aunt Barbara, and there are other ones that I don't know about, but being saved and going through that, and I found that to be extremely vital, because I went after that, after she had passed away. It was a struggle. Like even the night before, when she was on her way, she was on her way out, and they were there and stuff like that. I couldn't even be in there. I would go over into my room, and I believe the Cleveland Cavaliers were playing. They were playing the Golden State Warriors. I had taped the game. The game was on. It was watching me. I had it on. I was trying to just get my mind off of it because I was done. I mean, literally, physically, but mentally, when Bridget was someone that I thought that I was going to, I thought we were going to grow old together. My sisters had already labeled us the old couple. We were doing old people's things like my parents. So we were already the old couple. And so I thought we were going to go together. I said, so we're going to go together out in the tribulation period or in the second coming, or before we thought it was a rapture. We were going to be caught up together. But I never imagined, for lack of a better term, I never imagined or never thought of going out without Bridget. I just didn't think. I thought it can happen to someone else, but you never think it can happen to you. You always hear my father sit behind here and always talk about you never know what's going on in your body. You've heard him say this for years, and you always think, it can happen to someone else, and you hear about spouses losing another spouses. You hear about newlyweds. You hear about newlyweds just being married and all of a sudden they lose a spouse the same day, or they both lose their lives the same day. And, and I thank the Lord that he gave me, the 27 years that I did have, because then you look in that perspective, I'm very thankful for that. But I was done. I was literally done. And I felt as though, it's hard to describe how I felt, because I never felt I would feel this way, because you see things in movies and you say, it's a movie, and you hear about stories, but you never think that you'll ever go through anything like that. And I hit an all-time low. When I said I hit an all-time low, I hit an all-time low. And I remember them taking them, my sisters, I guess God's grace kicked in with my sisters, and like Pig was there, helping clean Bridget's body and things like that, and I don't know how she did it, and Pig was a trooper. My sisters were a trooper. I don't know what I would have did without my sisters. But they stepped right in. Pig's cleaning the body, and she went right to work. Pig was working with Bridget, and the whole time my sisters were helping me out with Bridget's ordeal. you would have thought they had 30 years of experience of doing what they were doing. I mean, like Pig was a pro. Shell was a pro. I mean, I saw how the nurses, we had some very good nurses and, registered nurses with a lot of experience in the ICU in the, the hospital that Bridget was in. And Pig and Shell, they watched and they observed and they saw how everything went. They were better than the registered nurses that we were dealing with, a lot better. I mean, I wouldn't have been able to afford to pay someone to give Bridget the care that my sisters and Kathy was giving her, the coffee enemas, and we had Sister Grimes and we had Beanie coming up, and but my sisters, I mean, I was literally shocked even when they were doing it, taking care of her. I wouldn't have been able to do it by myself. I just wouldn't have been able to do it, and it's just the way the Lord orchestrated everything for them to be there at the right time. And Pig stepped right in after she passed away and cleaned the body, prepared her body so that they can come pick her body up. I was done. I was a emotional wreck. And I'm saved, and I was an emotional wreck. I don't even want to think about how would I have been if I was unsaved. I don't know. I mean, I was saved and I was done. I mean, I was literally done. And I can tell my mom, she knew I was done. My sisters, Pig is the second youngest. So Pig became like the big sister. She became the big sister. And so they came, took her body, and I would stay in my office, and I didn't cry so much I've never cried so much in my life. I think I cried more in 1 hour than I cried in my whole entire life, because I never cried. I mean, I'm not a crier. I can count, before Bridget's ordeal, I could have counted the times on my hand that I've cried, other than, getting tore up when I was a kid, getting your spankings. But other than that, I could have counted on one hand the times that I've cried, and not too many times have I cried. And I was having emotional breakdowns and just breaking down, and I was done. So I had quarantined myself to the office, and I'm trying to process everything because it happened so fast. Because I never, I was expecting Bridget to make a full recovery, and this was just catching me all off guard, and I just wasn't able to process. Even though the days prior I knew that the end was coming, I just couldn't really, I couldn't process it. And it was like being hit. I mean, it was like being hit by a tractor trailer. It was like someone took my heart out and ripped it out. And Bridget, you can ask my son, Bridget was the rock of our family. And so, it was like you've lost the rock of your family, your stability. And I was done. I mean, the words can't describe how I felt. I was anxious, and my father talks about that anxiety. And I don't know. I think my heart was beating at 130 beats per minute. My resting heart rate. I mean, it was like my heart was about to jump out of my chest. It dropped out, and then it jumped out, it came back in my chest. It was about to jump out. It was hard to describe it. So the pursuing, I remember the next day, the devil's fighting you the whole time in your mind and bringing things, and the devil acted up during this whole time. So I'm sitting at my desk, and where my desk is, I can oversee towards building 1, the main building. I can see over the grass, and I can see over that area. So I'm there, and I'm, crying a river. No, I wasn't crying a river. I was crying an ocean. I was crying oceans and seas. The river wasn't big enough for the way I was crying. I was done. I was Taya on steroids. And if anybody knows Taya I don't know if she's still like that, but Taya, growing up, we would tease her. When I say Taya can cry, Taya cry. Punky Brewster's dog passed away, she's crying. We would watch these movies, and every time movie night, Taya's crying during the movie. Something happens, and we try to explain, Taya, it's just a movie, what are you doing? She's always crying. So, and it was crazy because every time I was crying, I said, I'm just like Taya. I said, what am I doing? I said, how am I like Taya? I mean, like this whole ordeal, Taya was coming to my mind because I always equate, just crying at the, a drop is Taya. When we were growing up, she would always cry about something. Something happened, she'll get emotional and she'll just cry. So I'm just crying like crazy. So I'm there, it was in the afternoon, I think it was an afternoon, and I look and I see Red skipping down the hill with Anthony. I said, what in the world? I was burnt up. When I said I was hot, I said, I'm thinking in my mind, I said, this boy's mother just died, and he's skipping down the hill with Anthony, just laughing. And I said, what is happening here? I was burnt up with him. I said, Red's the only child, and Bridget spoiled him to death. So speaking of Bridget spoiling him to death, I'm going to tell you, digressing for a second, how she would spoil him. Bridget she would put on this aura that she was like a tough person. But anybody that really knows Bridget's a softie inside. She's really a softie, but she likes to put on this Albany, Arbor Hill toughness. So she always, that's her, all of us, my sisters, everybody, we're not impressed with it. So she tries to be tough all the time, like, oh, this is the way she spoils Red. One of the things, she would spoil him. Since he was a little kid, since he was able to walk, we would go to like the Walmarts let's say Walmarts. And so he was able to walk and able to push a cart. So we would get our cart. All of a sudden, we see this guy, he has his cart. So we're going shopping. And we're just shopping away. And it's like, Red, what are you doing with that cart? Oh, I'm just pushing it. I just want to push it like mommy. So he just want to push his cart. So he says, okay, now I'm just going to go over in the toy section. I said, okay. So we'll keep an eye on him and let him go over into the toy section. We'll do our shopping. The next thing we know, he said, meet us up front, Red. He comes up to meet us up front. He has the basket full of toys. I said, what are you doing with all those toys? I'm not buying that and this and that. Next thing you know, Bridget's buying his toys for him. He buys the whole basket. So he had her, being the only kid, had her wrapped around his finger. So that was the normal ordeal. It happened all the way up until she passed. We'll go shopping, and his old rusty self, 20-something years old, goes with a cart. Like, Red, don't try to pull that stunt right now. You're 20-something years old. You did that all throughout your teenage years and everything. You got a cart. It's not working. She said, yeah, he can do that. And Bridget wants to put her tough girl act on. Yeah, he can do that if he wants. I'm not buying anything for him. You better go get you a job. I said, yeah. I said, Bridget's getting tough now. He goes rolling with his cart. Next thing you know, it's filled up with something. And said, I don't know how you're going to buy that. I said, yeah, good, Bridget. I said, let me go get the car. I go to get the car, and all of a sudden, I see him coming out with a bag. I'm like, what's going on? She said, he burns me up. I said, what do you mean he burns you up? He burns me up. He pulled a stunt. Yeah, he's going to pay me back, too. I'm going to get all of his LE. She didn't do anything. He would do the same thing with the mall. And he would be telling us, oh, Mom, I want this, and I want this at the mall, and I saw this. She said, yo, you better get a job. And so I said, and she would always trick me. I always think, oh, so finally she's going to really get tough. I said, good. I would hear her conversation. Mom, but I want this. And how much does it cost? Oh, it costs $1,200. $1,200? Yeah, I'm not getting anything for you. She said, you better go get a job. How am I going to get a job? I'm working for the ministry. Well, you better get a side job or something. She says, I'm not buying it for you. And next thing you know, come home calling, Bridge, where are you at? I'm here at the mall. I said, what are you doing at the mall? This boy wants to show me something. I said, I thought you said you weren't buying any for him. He can show it to me all he wants to. I got to do some running around myself. So I said, okay. Next thing I know, they come back, and I see them coming with all these bags, and I see Red opening up his boxes like he just had a Christmas day, a morning. I said, Bridge, what happened? I said, how does he have a $3,000 computer? What's going on? She said, he's going to pay me back. She said, I don't care. He's going to pay me back. So I was just telling you all to explain to you, to give you an idea on how she would spoil. She did everything for that boy. So when I saw him skipping down that hill with Anthony, I was burned up. I said, she would spoil this boy. I mean, we didn't have any other kids, and she was the only one. So she put everything she wanted into him, and I was so burnt up. I'm trying to figure out, how in the world is this boy getting God's grace? And I'm like praying. I said, I need to get some grace because I can't go on like this anymore. He's skipping down, laughing with Anthony. And then I see Elder Holmes and Deacon Banks, and they're just working away and just laughing and joking. I said, what in the world's happening here? I said, Bridget just passed away. I was burnt. I mean, I didn't say anything to anyone, but to myself, the devil's acting up and he's amplifying things in my mind. And I was burnt up. I'm just looking out there and everybody, I said, how in the world is everybody having joy? And I don't have any. I was done. So I didn't say anything to anyone. I was more burnt up with Red, and he's just going about his business. See, and obviously God's grace kicked in. See, his emotions are more like Marquita's. It's hard to read them. They keep their emotions in. He's like his Aunt Marquita. So like even the time when she was sick, it was hard for me to read him. I knew she was very sick, and I tried not to tell him because I didn't know how he was going to take it. But all along, he had known. And he said, they think I'm dumb, but I guess he knew the whole time. I try to keep it from him. But he's like his Aunt Marquita, and they keep things in. But I saw him, and I just saw how I would be in my office, and I would hear him out in the house with Anthony, just talking regular. And I said, how in the world is this guy having God's grace? And Pig's checking up on me, and I knew Pig was tore up, Shell was tore up, and I knew they were going through it too. But they were so strong when dealing with me. Pig had to check up on me every half hour. She's calling. She was like the mother. Pig became the mother. She was mothering me, and she was like checking up on me, and so I'll be up in the bed sleeping, and all of a sudden I hear, you all right in there? I said, what in the world? Who's this? And Pig's up there. She's checking up on me in the bed. And I think, Pig didn't say it, but I think Pig and Shell, especially Pig, I think Pig thought I was suicidal. I wasn't suicidal, but I did. I'm going to be honest with you. I had no desire to live. I wanted to go. I was like Fred Sanford. You remember Fred Sanford? And when he wanted to go home, and every time he had his little fake heart attacks, and he was going, what was her name that he wanted to go? What was her name? Elizabeth. I'm coming home to see you, Elizabeth. Well, that's the mindset I had. I said, I'm ready to go home. I said, I'm ready to go home with Bridget. I said, I'm done. It was selfish, but that's the way I felt. I wasn't suicidal, but I knew Pig had some concerns about me. Her and Shell had some serious, and Buff, she was in Atlanta, but they had some serious concerns about me. So I didn't eat or drink. I didn't eat or drink anything, I think, for about 3 days, and I didn't do it intentionally. It just wasn't on my mind. I was that distraught. I was that distraught. And they were trying to give me something to eat, and I felt, and then I knew I had to drink something because I felt my kidneys hurting, and I started to shut down. I think they were starting to shut down, so I had to drink something. So I forced myself to drink something. So I remember one late night, I decided just to get off the campus to do something. I went driving around in Greenfield. Next thing I know, Pig is calling me. Where are you at? Where you at, son? What's going on? And I said, I'm just driving around. Oh, I can hear Pig she was concerned. So Mama Pig was concerned about me driving. They didn't know what was going on. What are you doing driving around? So she passed away on an early Monday morning, and from Monday to Thursday, I just can't describe how I felt. I mean, it's indescribable how I felt. I was done. Like literally, I cried so much, I was done. And I remember my mom had orchestrated a prayer, and they all came over to pray. And I tried to pray. I couldn't even get through the prayer because every time I tried to pray, I was just crying like crazy. And I saw them peeking and looking, and I tried my best to conceal it, but I was just overwhelmed with emotions. I was done. So I kept on praying. I said, Lord, I couldn't take it anymore, to be honest with you. I was in so much physical pain. I thought I was going to have to be hospitalized. Physically, emotionally, I was done. And I was praying, and I said, Lord, your grace is going to have to kick in sometime. It was like 4 days, and I didn't know how I was going to be able to do it. I mean, how am I going to be myself? I thought the way I was going, I thought it was going to take at least 5 years for me to be where I'm at right now, literally. Because I remember calculating in my mind, I said, I'm not getting any better. It's like 4 days and I'm not getting any better. And I said, I'm not going to be of sorts in about 5 years from now. I'm not going to be able to talk about this or anything. It's going to take me about 5 years to recover. So Pig, I believe it was Pig, Mama Pig, they had orchestrated for me to go with them and to get me out of the house and to go with them to Holyoke to do some shopping for the homegoing. I didn't want to go, but I ended up agreeing to go because I had shut myself in my office and in my bedroom, and I was just done. I didn't know how I was going to do it. So I ended up going with them, and Pastor Shell came with us. It was Shell, and we had to pick Buff up from the airport. So we ended up going, and Red was with us. But things, my sisters started, being around my sisters, and they started opening things up. And then I guess things really opened up when me and Shell got into a dispute, and she chewed me out, and so I guess that I needed a good chewing out. It wasn't about Bridget, it was about something else, something crazy, but so I said, wow, that's what I needed to do, is to get chewed out, and for her to jump on my case. And when she acted like nothing ever happened, she just jumped right on me. And I saw Buff looking like Shell. She was ruthless. He just lost his wife, and Greenleaf is going to jump all over him like this. So that was like that. Believe it or not, her and I getting into a little dispute was things are starting to get better, because that was natural. It's normal for our siblings. We get into our little disputes. And we got into the dispute, and then all of a sudden, at the end of the day, I think we ended up going. I didn't eat. That was the first meal I ate. I had never. They brought me to some restaurant I had never been to before, and so that was like my first meal since what? To be honest with you, I didn't even eat that Sunday. So that was the first meal since Sunday, or since Saturday, and things started to open up. And then all of a sudden, slowly but surely, God's grace started to kick in. It started to kick in. Slowly but surely, it started to kick in. So Monday was the homegoing. So it was a week later, from a week, after it passed, and we had the homegoing. And by the time I had gotten to the homegoing, well, I think I could have got here Friday. No, I didn't get here Friday. I got here Sunday. And so I know people were shocked to see me playing the keyboards. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to play the keyboards. I don't think I was going to. I never even thought about it. I never even thought about it. But I didn't know I wasn't supposed to be playing, because I remember Pig and them asked me, "You're going to play the piano?" I said, "Yeah." I didn't know I was supposed to, because by then, by Sunday, God's grace started to kick in. It was kicking in strong. And I remember seeing, the saints, and they'll look, have that sorry look. I'm so sorry, and this and that. But at that time, they didn't realize I had already cried ocean, and I really didn't have any tears left. And so I got my hugs. I had never been hugged so much in my life. I'm not a hugger, and so now I hug now. So I'm a hugger. I hug now. I got broken in. Since Bridget's passing, I hug. So, but I've never been much of a hugger. So now I hug. Yeah, so I ended up playing the piano, and I can see people like peeking at me. I saw them out of the corner of their eyes. People are looking, and it's understandable, because I know how I would, feel, and I would be towards someone that just lost the love of their life, actually I thought I would laugh to myself because they were expecting to see if he's going to break down and see what's going to happen, and they'll come to me real gentle, and everybody's really gentle with me, and they're handling me with kid gloves. And so Monday rolls around, and I was scheduled to speak at Bridget's homegoing, but God's grace had kicked in so good, but I said, this is too good to be real. Because I said, I'm not going to be able to make it up there. I said, I know I haven't cried lately, and I know I'm feeling so much better, and God's grace has really kicked in. But I said, what if I get up there and I end up breaking down? So I didn't want to take that chance. So I said, you know what? I told my mom, I said, you know what? I'm going to film it. I'm going to film what I have to say. And I said, I don't know if I'll be able to get it all, but I'll film something. Because I just didn't want to take the chance of getting up here, and then all of a sudden those emotions, the way I felt that week prior, I didn't want to break down like that. I didn't want to take that chance. But when I got here, we viewed the body. I saw, my sisters were crying and things like that. I think my eye, a little bit just came down, just a little bit. And I tried to make myself cry. I'm going to be honest with you. I cried so much. I tried to make myself cry, and nothing would come out. And I thought something was wrong. I said, good gracious. So I'm trying to make myself cry. Nothing happened. So we're sitting here, and then towards the end, the last viewing, all of a sudden, I guess the last viewing, everyone's coming up. So I came up to see. I saw people, people were crying. Little Sabrina, she was falling out, whatnot. So I felt a little emotion, and I said, I said, everybody's crying and whatnot. I said, let me make myself cry. I had tried to make myself cry, and I think a little wetness came out of my right eye, a little wetness on the side. So then I was sitting down, and everyone's viewing it and watching, and then Buff passes out. Buff is passing out. Shell had to hold her up. Then all of a sudden, I get hit from the behind. I said, good God. Somebody's hugging. I got hugged from behind. All of a sudden, somebody hugged me from the side. So I didn't want to turn around to be obvious, who's hugging me? What's going on? And they're just crying and shaking. And you know how they're crying and they're trying to make you cry. I said, what's happening? So I'm just getting rocked. I said, what? What in the world's happening right now? I said, I've been doing good. God's grace had kicked in, and I'm not really crying. And I'm just like, so I'm getting pushed. I said, oh. And so I'm trying to see I'm trying to peek what's happening. There was Tanya and Brooke. They gave me a group hug. They were trying to bring me down, and they're crying and shaking, and they had me, and I said, so they're shaking me, how like those preachers, and they're praying for someone, and they get their head. And so they grouped, my two cousins, they had group hugged me, and they group hugged me pretty good, and they almost knocked me off of the bench. I almost got knocked off the bench, and that was the closest. And I said, wow, they were crying on me. So I said, well, maybe I'm supposed to feel, So I tried to make myself cry, and I was trying. Nothing happened. So as the days went on, God's grace just kicked in, and it wasn't and it scared me, And even right now, when I think about it, I'm gonna be honest with you, it scares me sometimes because it's been June. It's going to be 4 months, and the 20th of this month, and I don't even know how. I talk about it. I can talk about the ordeal, and I don't even know how I'm going on because I wasn't even used. You got to think about it. When I left college, I went to Mississippi and then I went to Chicago. I came back home for a few months, and then after that, because I was engaged when I was in college, I got married. So you got to think, for almost 30 years, I've always had someone there with me. I've had someone there with me. And so the house is just naked. It was quiet. So it took some it took some time getting used to it. And you can tell Jeff, my son Jeff, he knew something was wrong when she was sick, and he knew something was wrong when she passed away. It sounds crazy, and he still knows something's wrong, because now he's very, very vocal. I mean, he was vocal before, but he does a lot of talking now. He does a whole lot of talking. I mean, he talks and talks and talks. He's always talking. He talks my head off. But he's very, very vocal. And I don't know. I have to stop and sit down and think, like, am I supposed to feel any different? Because I don't know. And the thing about it is, I questioned myself, but then I remember asking God. I said, I can't go on like this anymore. I said, that grace is going to have to kick in pretty soon, or I'm going to be hospitalized physically and emotionally and mentally. I'm going to be in a mental ward. And it kicked in just in the nick of time. That 5th day on that Friday, when my sisters brought me out and they broke the ice, Greenleaf broke the ice by chewing me out, it kicked in right in time. And to this day, like the other day, even yesterday, I was thinking about, I'm just driving and I'm saying, is something wrong with me? Because I should still be in mourning. I haven't been in mourning. And I know it's God's grace, but, I have to catch myself and correct myself, because these thoughts will come to my mind. Well, maybe you really didn't love her the way you're. And I said, I have rebuked those thoughts that, come to mind to question whether or not there was really love. But I only can contribute to the prayer of the saints and for God's grace, because unless you've experienced people that have experienced God's grace, you can talk about it, and you're only going to get it when you need it. Because I always remember my father talking about, you're only going to get God's grace when you need it. It's not going to just be there. And you can talk about, you hear about people, the martyrs, right before, when they're being asked to denounce Christ, and then all of a sudden a peace and a serenity comes over them, and words come to them. The Lord brings scriptures to them at the right time, and all of a sudden He gives them the strength, and they get God's grace, and it's just in a time of need. But when you think about it and you don't need it, you think like, this is impossible for me to go through something like that. And if you would ask me like this, I'm telling you, those 4 days, I don't know. I didn't think I was going to be able to face anyone. I just thought I think I was like this close from being hospitalized. And then all of a sudden His grace just kicked in. And it kicked in, and it's still there to this day. And I didn't think I would ever be able to talk about any of this. I remember estimating, I said, it's probably going to, as bad as I felt, I said, it's probably going to take me about 5 years to recover. And I feel as though I've recovered. I'm going to be honest with you, I miss her, and I know she's in a better place, and she made it home to glory. But I don't know if I'll have a future breakdown, but I just haven't had any breakdowns. Every couple of days, I think I try to make myself cry. I try to. I'll look at pictures, and I'll go on my iPhone, iPad, and I'll look at it, and then I'll try to make myself cry. And I haven't been able to make myself cry. Seriously, I've tried. I think I tried to make myself cry. I got close yesterday, but didn't. After about 10 minutes, I gave up. So I tried to make myself cry because I think maybe it was therapeutic, but I guess I think I've cried so much I don't have any more tears to give. I'm serious. I cried. I guess I made up for all the years that I didn't cry, and I kept things suppressed. I just let loose. During those 4 days. But I'm telling you right now, I'm definitely a witness for God's grace, because I don't know, without his grace, I would have been a basket case, literally a basket case. And being saved, obviously being saved, that helps, help to eliminate, that scenario. But, so if there's anything as far as if there was a title, it would be God's grace. And he continues to bless. And every day, I know people are looking at me like crazy, because I remember when Aunt Dottie, when she passed away. And I remember watching Elder Winley. And I remember maybe a day or two afterwards, and I heard Elder Winley with his hyena laughing away. I think he was in a building somewhere. I remember being burnt up. I said, what in the world is he laughing about? I said, Aunt Dottie just passed away. And I knew how crazy he was over her. But I couldn't see it, but it was God's grace, obviously, because he was right back to his normal self. He was just, I remember, I never said anything to him about it, but I couldn't believe it. He was just like his normal self and just, and I knew, I talked with Elder Winley, and that man loved that woman. And he was just his jovial self. I mean, I'm assuming, I know he mourned in his private time, or he maybe mourned in front of some other people, but from a distance, from me watching and observing him, I couldn't believe how he had just bounced back and was just normal. And I would remember, coming to him with trepidation, the way people come with me, with trepidation to see how Buki's going to act. And I remember he was the first person I saw, and I witnessed how God's grace, can kick in. And watching, Sister Suggs, how brave she was to come up here during her husband's homegoing and to be able to stand up here, and Sister Dorothea. And so we do have witnesses in our midst that can attest to God's grace. Now, I want to close out on three things, maybe two things, maybe it might be three, but one of the things three things. First, I want to apologize. I was going through some things, and there was a lot of people. I might have omitted your names. I want to thank all the saints and everyone that chipped in, the ones that came, everyone that came to see Bridget. Even if you weren't able to see Bridget, your prayers are more important than anything else. And I felt, even if we didn't see you, we felt the prayers of the saints. And I want to thank everyone that, gave cards. And even if you didn't give a card, more important to me is your prayers. And I want to thank everyone. I haven't been able to thank everyone individually. I'm going to throw Pastor Greenleaf Shell under the bus. Shell was supposed to handle the card situation. She didn't, as far as the responding, because we got a lot of cards. People gave money and things like that, and I appreciate it. I don't be honest with you, I could have read through some of them. I don't remember, because everything was just still trying to process everything, even though God's grace had kicked in, still trying to process everything. Even like right now, it's still surreal to me right now that she's gone. But I want to apologize if I didn't get to thank any of you all individually. And I want to thank everyone else, for your prayers, cards, or any monetary things that you've contributed to me and Bridget's case. And I want to thank the ones that that came and that were able to help out with Bridget, hands-on. They came up there to help out. I want to thank all of you all. And the second thing, I don't want to apologize about this. I don't know. See, an apology means that you're sorry and you're not going to do it again. So I think I'm still going to do it again. I'm not going to stop. So I really can't call it an apology. So I said, I'm just going to call it an excuse. Excuse me. I've been chatty lately, so you can excuse me. I've been extremely chatty. See, when Bridget was here, I was able to talk a hole in her head. So the last 30 years, I've had somebody to talk a hole in her head. So Bridget knew how to handle me. So she'll be out of town. I'll call her at 3 o'clock in the morning. And she said, Buki, I'm going to bed. And she'll put the phone down and let me chat. And I'll talk a hole in her head when we're driving. Or I'll go upstairs, wake her up, and talk a hole in her head. So now that Bridget's been gone, I've been like the puppy that got kicked out of the house and put out in the rain. And he's looking for a new master. And so I've been chatting people's ears off and heads off. And I know I'm extra chatty. So I'm not going to apologize for being chatty, because I think I'm still going to be chatty. I'm still chatty. So, but excuse me. I'm like the little puppy. He's outside in the rain. He lost his best friend, and he's looking for a new friend. He's chatty. He doesn't have anyone's ear to chew off. So I've been chewing some of your ears off, and you're like, God, this guy won't shut up. He's just talking. He's just talking and talking. This guy's just texting, and well, I'm not going to apologize, but excuse me. So I'm the puppy that I'm left out in the rain. So I'm lonely. So I do a lot of chat. I do a lot of chatting these days. So no apologies. Just excuse me. I don't know how long it's going to last, but just excuse me. I'm very chatty these days. The last thing I want to put to rest a rumor and a myth of that I think that's been going around. I hear that's been going around. I want to put it to rest. People didn't see me for a while, so while I was there being Bridget's caretaker, I was gone for about, maybe I was gone. Some of you all didn't get to see me for about 3 months. So you didn't get to see me for about 3 months. Well, it's not a secret. I never tried to do it was a secret. Well, you came back and all of a sudden you saw me, and then people looked and they said, I saw people look, and I saw their eyes, and I saw them looking, and they said, and I know what some people are saying, there's been some chatter that's been going on, and they said, wow, I need to pray for Buki, give him some extra prayer. He was really stressed out. He's really, really stressed out. And so I know you think I was stressed out, because he said, wow, he came back and you can tell he was really stressed out because of all that white hair he has. Well, to tell you the truth, I've had white hair or gray hair. It's more white. I've had it since I was 13 years old. So I had a patch. And from 13 years old, I had a patch of white hair. It stayed in one spot. So all of a sudden, when I get in my early 30s, like 31, 32, all of a sudden, it started spreading around a little bit. Little white hair started popping out here and there. So I was able to manage it for a couple of years by pulling them out. And all of a sudden, it started spreading like a California wildfire. So I took things into my own hands. Bridget didn't ask. She didn't care. She didn't care less. So I started taking care of some things. I started doing some cosmetic things. I didn't care about what anybody else did. I didn't like the way it looked. So I've been taking care of myself and doing just for men for about 17 years. People didn't know that. I never tried to hide it. The only person that knew it was Taya. Taya would always look, and she says, "Oh, we're not looking pretty today. What's going on there?" So Taya would always let me know, it's time for you to get a little touch up. So I never tried to hide it. I just didn't like because it's uneven and it just goes. It's not the way I didn't like it. So I always said, well, when I hit 40, I said I'll just let it go. Still didn't like the way it looked at 40. So 50, I still didn't like the way it looked. So during Bridget's ordeal, doing research and things like that, and hair dyes and cancer and all that stuff, you know what? I said, you know what? I'm just going to let it go. I don't care. And I still didn't like the way it looked. I didn't care. I didn't like it. So I said, let me just let it go. So I come to church, and I've been coming, and I see people looking like, wow, we got to give him some extra prayer because he was really stressed out. Because they thought, a lot of people think that happened overnight. No, it's been like that. It's been like that for a long, long time. Well, the good thing about it is I have options now. Sister Evangelist Sunday Joe might not like it, but I have options. So the options I have three options. I have options where I don't like the way it's looking, so I can go back to black, or I can go all white. So don't be confused when you see it all white, because I have to take measures into my own hand. So it's not making up its mind of what it actually wants to do. I think I look more like a skunk right now because it's not even. So I'm not stressed out. So some of you people, the Northfield people might see it first. So I have options. I can go black, I can go white, gray, or I can go bald, like everybody's seen me. I have no problems going bald. So I have some people that they don't have options as far as that's concerned, as far as going bald is concerned. So they don't have options. I actually, it's not bald. Actually, it's called shaven. So thank the Lord, I still have something. It might be white, but I have some options. I can shave it, or I can make it all white. I'm looking into some options. I'm looking into some alternative things to make it all white and get everything together, and we can be all on the same page. Or I can make them all black. So when you see everything all white, if you see everything all white, don't get confused. I'm not stressed out. I'm not in mourning anymore. That means that I intentionally did it. And if you see it all black, and don't judge, women, don't you all judge. Don't judge me. You all have the nerve to judge me, because a lot of women are doing some things. They got some things in their hair and some extensions and some weaves and things like that. So don't judge me. I don't want to be judged. But I have options. Women have options. I have options. I'm not going to put any hair pieces in there. And if the Lord decides that he wants to knock it all off, like Uncle Beebe or Elder Lindley, then he's going to knock it all off. Then everybody already knows how I look with a shaven head. So if you can pray for me, keep me in your prayers, but you don't have to pray for me as far as stress is concerned, or as far as me having any more stress or any mourning. If you see it all white, that means that I made it all white. So I'm weighing out my options right now, and I'm consulting with Pig. We're devising a plan to see what the next step is going to be. And we're going to see if it's going to be black or if it's going to be white. And I think I'm leaning towards white. So we're doing some things. Me and Greenleaf, we're also discussing some things. So keep me in your prayers, and when you see me the next time, Troy people, it might be all white. So, and it's not because of stress or anything, it's because I have options now. Praise the Lord.
Praise the Lord. We were blessed to hear Brother Buki, and hopefully he decides all black. Or he just leaves it alone. But anyway, we thank God for that. And he does have a part 3 that he's going to come up with, part 3 and 4. 3 and 4 are his health seminars, okay? Because we want to do some preventative things. He's learned a lot from this ordeal. And we thank God for the grace, and all the family thanks God for how fast the grace has kicked in, because he was really saying, he said, am I really supposed to feel like this? And that's grace. That is God's grace. And thank God for the grace that is evident in all of our lives, all of the family's lives. All of us had our moments, and every last one of us had our moments. I had mine in the middle of Women of Faith. You say, you never let it all out. Well, it just happened. It just came. All of us had our moments. I remember when Marquita had hers, and different ones of us we can recall. That was our moment. We had it. But thank God, since then, grace has kicked in. We miss Bridget, but all of us, in hindsight, looking back, we all knew. What, we all can identify with what Brother Buki was saying. When I didn't want to hear Elder Massey when he was saying that Bridget said, I just want whatever God's will is. I never wanted her to say that, and I didn't want Elder to keep repeating it. Now remember what Bridget said. I didn't want to hear that. You know how you just want to tune things out like that? Marquita knew because the song that God put on her heart, she knew it was talking about heaven, but she didn't want to dwell on that aspect of it. God dealt with all of us individually to prepare us, and we kind of knew. We really knew, but until the last minute, we wanted to believe for our own selves. It wasn't for Bridget. Like Brother Buki said, she had that serenity, she had that peace, she had that comfort. We knew that she was ready. We knew that, but we weren't ready. We knew that she was ready, but we didn't want her to be ready. And that's what it was. And it wasn't until that night prior to when her her pulse was going down and everything. I remember Brother Buki calling me, and she was just up. She wouldn't close her eyes. She wouldn't go to sleep. She wouldn't, and that was when she had been, 72 hours just going. And for our sake, she kept staying awake, kept, looking at us and whatever. And I came down, and it was nothing but the Lord that I was able to even say it. I just said, Bridget, you fought a good fight. You fought. You're tired. I wasn't even want to saying it to like a final, I was just saying it, for tonight, and I didn't want it, but in the back of my mind, I knew, and so I said, Bridget, it's okay. And I everybody else prior to me getting up there, they were trying to, put their hands over her eyes to try to go to sleep, Bridget. You need some rest so you can fight tomorrow and everything. You need to go to sleep so you can fight. And she wouldn't do it. Her eyes just stayed riveted open. And then I just went over and I said, Bridget, and I whispered in her ear, and I spoke out loud. I said, Bridget, you're tired. You're tired. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. And I put my hand, I did like that, my hand over her eyes like that, and she kept her eyes closed, like she really believed for that it was okay for her to stop fighting. And from, after that, she went to sleep. And Bridget Buki kept monitoring her, and then she fell asleep in the Lord, fell asleep and went home to glory. And we thank God, no pain. And as Buki was standing here saying he doesn't understand, God's abundant grace, how it kicked in, we understand. We sorrow not as others sorrow, as if they have no hope. Yes, there's a time to cry, there's a time to mourn, there's a time, but sooner or later, God's grace, thank God for his grace, because I don't know, anyone who's ever been through what, looking at Sister Suggs, we're encompassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses. Sister Suggs, Sister Dorothea, and we forgot about Sister Cookie there, just lost her companion. And so you never know. Like you said, you never know when it's going to happen. And you just have to stay prepared. Because if it happens to you and you're not saved, the outcome is not the same. People have literally lost their minds, lost their own lives, could not live any longer, and have not been the same because of something like that. We thank God that we know who he is. Thank God for his grace, and thank God that he's able to do exceeding abundantly above all that we ask or think.